Stories of an Aircraft Builder.
The following is an article by Heiko Müller that appeared in Klassiker der Luftfahrt, Classics of Aviation, in its issue number 1 of the year 2005. Small errors can rarely be avoided in such publications. This article turned out very well, but also has one such small error. It mentions that of the two aircraft to be built, one is to remain without certification, which was not correct. At the time it was precisely this aircraft that was being certified, while the certification for the other aircraft was delayed by the client. I think it is important to mention this here, as there will be a special kind of adventure later on, which I will then report. It is also mentioned here that Reinhold Platz is said to have been Fokker's chief designer. I must not tire of emphasizing that Platz had a great deal of influence in aircraft development, but was not a designer, and certainly not Fokker's chief designer. At no time. The turnbuckles on the customer's machine at the time were actually original parts from the Strele collection, but these were used for the commissioned machine at the customer's request. Although they were contemporary, they were not the design Fokker used on the basis of photographs, but somewhat larger and differently shaped. The typical Fokker models were especially made by me for my reproduction. But now, let's hear the article. It appeared in Aviation Classics, issue number 1 of 2005. Airworthy with original engine. Fokker D.VII is being rebuilt. For the past 2 years, Achim Engels has been recreating a Fokker D.VII in Schorndorf. What makes the new construction unique is that it will be authentic to the original down to the last detail. When it comes to Anthony Fokker's airplanes, Achim Engels knows no compromises. For most of his life, the now 32-year-old has been intensively involved with Fokker's designs, researching everything to do with the famous Dutch aircraft manufacturer and collecting old parts and original plans. At the age of 15 he was commissioned by the Auto and Technic Museum in Sinsheim to build a non-airworthy Fokker D.I. Now he is well on the way to delivering his masterpiece with an airworthy Fokker D.VII. Since the beginning of 2002, Engels has been rebuilding the World War I fighter on behalf of a customer, true to detail down to the last screw. Its authenticity distinguishes this new construction from previous reproductions, none of which, according to Engels, actually reproduce a Fokker D.VII as delivered at the wartime. With this biplane, Engels has recreated what was probably the most powerful fighter of the First World War. The single-seater from 1918 was designed by Reinhold Platz, Fokker's chief designer. The biplane, which reached a top speed of 185 km per hour with a 160 horsepower inline 6-cylinder Mercedes D.III, had comparatively good flight characteristics and was considered particularly maneuverable. After the First World War, Fokker D.VIIs continued to fly with several air forces, for example in the Netherlands, Belgium and Switzerland. Only a few originals still exist today. One belongs to the German Museum at Munich. Engels actually goes into great detail in his new building. He has copies of almost all the original drawings still available today. Wherever possible, he even uses the earlier construction techniques. The turnbuckles of his replica are original parts from Halberstadt aircraft, which were also used in the Fokker D.VII in an identical design. He wants to vulcanize the white-grey tires of the original landing gear using the old technique of light-colored rubber material. I now know how the tires were constructed, but I will learn exactly how they were made, says Engels, who has learned a lot about the techniques used by aircraft manufacturers during the First World War. The engine is a real showpiece. The Mercedes D.III comes from the stocks of Luftverkehr Strehle, which Paul Strehle founded in 1921 as the first German airline. The Halberstadt CL-4s he used flew with the same engine that also powered Fokker's fighter, before the slightly more powerful BMW 3A was also used in a small number of D.VIIs towards the end of the war. Moto Bende in Königswinter, Sassenberg, has spent a year and a half getting the mighty 6-cylinder running again. Dirk Bende and his colleague Klaus Scheuren have built up an excellent reputation over the past 2 years. Among other things, they have brought back to life Siemens Halske and Argus engines, and even a mighty Junkers Jumo 213, which will power the replica of a Fokker Wolf FW 190 D9. The D.III for the Fokker D.VII is the only engine still in existence today that runs with the original steel pistons. Bende explains the special features of this engine. All other D.IIIs run with aluminum pistons, which do not require such an extreme fit, which is only between 4 and 7/100th of a millimeter for the steel pistons. After initial test runs, the engine, built in 1917, completed its first run under full load on November 21st, during which it turned at 1320 rpm, accompanied by an inspector. Achim Engels also made the propeller himself. Both in its construction with ash walnut and oak wood, and its profiling, it naturally corresponds exactly to the original. The fuselage and tail unit of the Fokker D.VII are already complete, apart from the covering and the installation of the controls. Engels is currently starting to build the wing in his workshop in Schondorf. If everything goes according to plan, the replica should be in the air before the end of 2005. However, you simply can't set a binding timetable for a project like this, says the enthusiast, allowing for delays. Parallel to the airworthy replica, another Fokker D.VII is being built in his workshop, which is not to be registered and is still looking for a buyer. There is a good chance that the airworthy replica of the historic fighter will not remain a one-off in the skies. In future, Engels also wants to offer kits of the Fokker D.VII in various stages of production for amateur aircraft builders. Then the railroader could finally turn his passion for the Fokker, in which he has invested every spare minute for years, into his profession. Written by Heiko Müller. For Aviation Classics, issue number 1 of 2005.